Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time of day it is that you are watching this video. I'm G. Samuel Verrett, and you are watching Winning Ways. It is a show where we help you with guidance from the Word of God, from practical applications of the Word to be successful, to win in life, to not be defeated, to not be overcome and overwhelmed, but rather to be an overcomer. And I'm so grateful that you're with me on a Monday here at I think it's the last week of October 2022. And I'll tell you, it's been a great month. Just a few minutes ago, I went outside on the porch, took a good look around the property that we live on, and noticed that it's snowing. In fact, we had to light our wood stove for the first time last night as it got really cold. And so I'll tell you what, a good wood stove will keep your house warm. In fact, it will overheat it if you're not careful. I literally had to open windows this morning because the heat was just a little too much. Well, I don't know what I knocked down, but I knocked something down. Anyhow, so here we are in October, the end of October, and we're already getting snow. And I hope that's not a precursor for what's coming for the rest of winter, because last year we had an incredible winter as far as the amount of snow that we received. It had been several years before they had had as much snow as or since they had had as much snow as we had last year. And we had over 45, 46 inches of snow. I mean, it snowed every day starting December 9th through the end of the year, every day but Christmas, that is. And then it started snowing in January, and finally it let up. And wow, we looked like we were in the Arctic Circle. Snow piled everywhere. And so it's already snowed a couple times. It snowed a couple days ago, and then it's snowing a little bit right now. So anyhow, that's the way it is in the mountains of Idaho. But I'm glad you're with me. And today I want to talk to you about some things I learned from a book by my favorite author. It's entitled An Enemy Called Average. It's by John Mason. And if you have never read any of author John Mason's books, I suggest you do so. He's got a lot of them. Let Go of Whatever Makes You Stop. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head, but I think I own every one of them, either in as a hard copy or I own the ebook, because I find his writing so inspirational, so motivational, at times so very convicting. And I just get a lot out of what John Mason has written. I can't remember. It was right after the book An Enemy Called Average came out. I was at a Christian bookstore in Phoenix, or Scottsdale, actually. And I was looking at some of the new books, and I saw it. It caught my attention. And so I purchased it and I devoured it. And believe me, as a traveling minister at the time, I used a lot of stuff from that book. And the first chapter of An Enemy Called Average, is titled Your Least Favorite Color Should Be Beige. And I thought, wow, that's an interesting title for a chapter. And then I read the chapter and I was like, yeah, I agree. And so you don't find me wearing very many uh, colors that are just beige or white or brown. I mean, I wear them sometimes, especially a white shirt occasionally. But God didn't. One of the things he says in the book is God didn't create you to blend in, but he created you to stand out. Beige is just kind of average. In Phoenix, when we lived there were only certain colors that you could paint your house in a lot of the subdivisions. You couldn't paint it a bright color. You had to go through the homeowners association and find out, is this color that I'm going to paint my house acceptable? And for the most part, the color that was acceptable is beige. And so everybody just kind of blended in. Nobody really stood out. Every now and then somebody would buck against the system and paint their house blue or green or yellow or something. And they, stuck out like a sore thumb, you might say, because everything else was beige. But they made up their mind, I'm not going to blend in. I'm going to stand out. It really changed just reading that first chapter in the book changed my opinion about a lot of things, because beige is an average color. And so I made a determination then, I'm not going to blend in. I'm going to stand out. I'm going to make a difference in the world. I'm going to be different. I'm not going to try to be like everybody else, try to be somebody that I'm not. And that's a problem we have a lot in our country and in our world, is everybody's trying to fit in and nobody wants to stand out. Well, God created you as an individual. If God would have wanted you to be like somebody else, he would have made you like somebody else, but he's not in the business of cloning. God makes originals. He doesn't make copies. So it's important to not blend in, but to stand out. That doesn't mean you just become a pain in the neck and you're just adversarial and you just hard to get along with. That's not what that means. It means, hey, the purpose God created me to accomplish, I'm going to accomplish that purpose. And I'm not going to settle for less than what God has called me to do, or less than what God has promised or said belongs to me. And that's a problem that a lot of Christians have, is they are settling for less than what is possible. And you start getting older and you start going, whoa, there's a whole lot of time of my life that was spent settling. And Holly said something when we lived in St. Louis. We were driving on the road in Earth City, and I mentioned to her, I said something about settling, and she said, God didn't create us to settle. He created dust to settle, but he didn't create us to settle. And I was like, wow, never thought of it like that. That's a good point. And she's right. God didn't create us to settle for less than. And so I would recommend this book, An Enemy Called Average, because there are some powerful truths in it. In the introduction, it starts out and says, mediocrity is a region bound on the north by compromise, on the south by indecision, on the east by past thinking, and on the west by lack of vision. Wow, that's a mouthful. And it's one of my favorite quotes from the book. And I have a lot of favorite quotes from the book, but that's one of them. Mediocrity, God didn't create us to be mediocre or average. That's what average is being mediocre, just, run of the mill, and he created us to be a people that are above average, that don't, as I said earlier, blend in, but stand out. And so we have to understand that mediocrity is a region bound on the north by compromise, on the south by indecision, on the east by past thinking, and on the west by lack of vision. People that compromise, that are indecisive, that are just continually thinking about the past. And there's good things in our past. There's nothing wrong with remembering those. But most people that I meet are not successful or winning in life because they're not focusing on the good things from their past. They're focusing on the bad things, the negative things, the setbacks, the failures, the starts and stops, the losses, and the things that have happened to them, the negative things that have happened to them. And so they never can move forward and they end up being mediocre, just barely getting by. And so God wants us to be exciting. He wants us to be innovative. He wants us to be transforming. He wants us to be productive. He doesn't want us to be lukewarm or indifferent or uh, neut- in a place of neutrality. No, he wants our attitude to be one of I'm moving forward. I'm going to be who God created me to be, and I'm going to do what God created me to do, and I'm going to have everything that God has created for me to have. And so, get this book, An Enemy Called Average. You can get it as a Kindle download. You can get it as a hard cover, soft cover actually, but as a book. I like both. I have hundreds of ebooks. You know, it's great because I can take them with me on the road. I can, sitting in the car. A lot of times, Holly is, she'll go in to do something. I don't feel like going in the store she's going into. So I sit in the car and I read. And so I have this book in both formats. I have the hard version, the hard copy of it, as well as the ebook. Lukewarm, indecisive people. This is something I learned from the book. Lukewarm, indecisive people are never secure, regardless of their wealth, education, or position. You can't be a lukewarm person. You can't be indecisive. You got to be on fire. You know, I think it was Charles Finney. It was said of him, was it him or Jonathan Edwards? Someone, any one of the preachers from the 1700s, 1800s. He said, people said, why is it that so many people come out to hear you speak? And he rode his horse from place to place and would just start, just get off his horse and start preaching, and crowds would surround him. And he said, the secret is I set myself on fire and people come to watch me burn. That's not an average person. That's not a mediocre, lukewarm, indecisive, never secure person. Number one, just to get up and start speaking in like street preachers have done in the past. I mean, just to do that, you don't know anyone, you have no support, but you're out there. You're not being indecisive, lukewarm, or insecure. You're pretty secure in who you are and what God's called you to do if you'll do that. So that's something I learned from this book, that lukewarm, indecisive people are never secure, regardless of their wealth, education, or position. You need to learn to create a habit of taking the initiative and don't ever start your day in neutral. One of the things, life is a lot like driving a car. This isn't in the book, but it's a lot like driving a car. You don't go anywhere as long as you're either in park or in neutral. If you're going to do anything and get anywhere, you got to put the car in gear. Whether it's going backwards or forward, it's got to be in gear. And a lot of people, their lives, they're just not in gear. They're not engaged. They're just coasting through life. They're just content to barely get by, to survive. Most people have a survival mentality instead of a thriving mentality. And this book will help you to get rid of that surviving mentality, to help you get away from what causes you to be average, and will raise you to a level where you're above average. And that's what God has for us. Opportunity is always where you are. Something I learned in this book, never where you were. It's always where you are. I have opportunities because of where I am right now. I don't have opportunities because of where I was last year or the year before when I lived in Phoenix. I don't have the same opportunities. I have new opportunities, different opportunities, better opportunities. And so, uh, something else I learned is the middle of the road is the most dangerous place to be. Boy, isn't that the truth? It's funny because we live out in the country, way out in the country, dirt roads, and we see dead animals in the road every now and then. Sometimes skunks. Sometimes we saw a dead turkey in the road yesterday, and we've seen other dead deer in the road. They crossing in the road in the middle of the night or during the day, and somebody doesn't see them, and boom, they hit it. Don't hit a deer; you will destroy the front end of your car. Turkeys aren't too bad, but anyhow, we haven't fortunately hit anything since we've lived here, but we see a lot of dead animals in the road, and they're dead because they were in the road and not off the road in the pasture or in the woods. And so the most dangerous place is in the middle of the road. And he writes about that in this book. It's pretty interesting. It's true. Uh, so we need to make sure we're where we're supposed to be doing what we're supposed to be doing. The more we look backward, he says in the book, the more we look backward, the less we are able to look forward. You can't safely navigate your way forward as long as you're always looking in the rearview mirror. There's a reason why the windshield is as big as it is and the rearview mirror is as small as it is. It's because you got to spend your time looking out the window, the windshield of the car, and not looking constantly in the rearview mirror. Don't look back unless that's the direction you want to go. Well, I'm just fired up today. I don't want to be average. I don't want to be run of the mill. I don't want to be mediocre. I want to be a person of purpose. I want to be a person of diligence. I want to be a person of accomplishment. I want I want not only to possess everything that God says I can have, but I want to do everything I feel God has called me to do. And I know if you're watching this show, it's probably because you saw the title and maybe you've listened for a few moments, but you have that same desire. I want to win in life. I don't want to just coast through life anymore. You know, I was 62, I'll be 63 in December. And one of the things that's really struck me is I don't have struck me in my mind is I don't have a whole lot of years left. I have far less years in front of me than I have behind me. And there are times I sat back and I've thought and prayed and confessed to the Lord, Lord, I wish I would have done more, put more time and more energy into what you put on my heart to do and called me to do in the past, because now if I feel like I'm just trying to make up time, and you can't do it. Once time's gone, it's gone. But I am determined going forward to not be average, to not just be content to coast through life, but I intend to accelerate and to excel and to rise to a new level and do everything I was created to do and called to do. Because when I stand before the Lord, I want to hear him say, well done, not good try, but well done, thou good and faithful servant. And I know you probably feel the same way. John Mason says in the book, as enthusiasm increases, stress and fear decrease. We need to be enthusiastic. To be enthusiastic, it comes from the Greek word entheos, which means God within or full of God. Man, when you are full of God, when you're full of the Spirit of God, the power of God, the love of God, it causes your enthusiasm to increase and it causes your stress and fear to decrease. There's not room for both. So these are just some of the things I've learned from the book An Enemy Called Average, one of my favorite books in the whole world. John Mason in the book says, learn the lesson and forget the details. A lot of times we remember the details, but we don't really grasp the lesson that we've learned from the things we've been through in life. And I like that. He says in the book, let go of whatever makes you stop. In fact, he's got another book called Let Go of Whatever Makes You Stop, and it's worth reading as well. So I just wanted to come on today. I was thinking about, actually had been reading the book, and I was thinking, there's a lot of great things in that book that has it's really touched me. It's really inspired me, motivated me. In fact, to be honest with you, some of my writing style was derived from reading An Enemy Called Average and the other books by John Mason. I like the way he writes it in nugget form. It's, and I read all kinds of books. I mean, Dr. David Jeremiah is one of my favorite authors, but boy, his books, tons of stories, just long chapters, and you got to really concentrate to read it. John Maxwell, great books on leadership, but and just full of great information. Dr. Miles Monroe, another author that I read quite a bit, the late Dr. Miles Monroe, his books are phenomenal. But what I really liked and appreciate about all of John Mason's books is that they're written in nugget form. And I mean, there's generally 52, I think it is 52 chapters per book, 52 weeks that you can read a chapter a day uh, f- uh, for per week, I should say. And there's in nugget form, easy to digest, concise, easy to assimilate, and easy to apply to your life. So that's what I think about things I've learned from the book An Enemy Called Average. Some of the things I've learned is I refuse to be average. I'm going to stand out. I'm not going to blend in. I'm going to make a difference by being different by God's grace. So thanks for watching today. I'll be back again later with another show. I pray you have a great day. God bless.